Hello everyone, it's Robin the Delta Crafter, and I want to thank you for joining me for another video on my YouTube channel. A couple of weeks ago, I posted a video with a couple of new color combinations for the fall, and today we're going to be using the second color combination to create a beautiful fall floral arrangement card. The florals for our arrangement are going to be made using the Autumn Bouquet die set from Hero Arts. So all of the die sets and stamp sets that I'm using today are a little bit older. They're not brand new to the market. Most of them came out last year. But I just wanted to kind of show you that you can still use the things that you have in your stash. You don't always have to go out and buy new things. So I took a couple of those dies, mainly the sunflowers and some of the wheat and some of the flower stems, and ran those through my die cutting machine using some mint tape, which made it easy to cut out multiples of the dies. I'm using Nina Classic Crest Solar White cardstock in the 80-pound weight for all of my die cuts, and you can see there I've kind of got 4 of each of them. Again, we're going to be making some bouquets, so we kind of need multiples of all the flowers. So here are the ink colors, the distressed ink colors that we're going to be using today. We're going to be coming in first with the bundled sage. Then we're going to add in some antique linen, and then we're going to add some rusty hinge. We're also going to add in a fourth color, and you'll see that in just a moment. So what I wanted to do is for these die cuts, and instead of cutting them out of colored cardstock, I wanted to ink them up because I wanted to get a little bit of irregularity and imperfection in the die cuts by doing some inking. So you're going to see that the inking is going to be uneven, and that's the look that I was going for. So I did the stems of the flowers using that bundled sage. Now I'm going to come in with antique linen. I'm going to use that on those wheat shafts as well as one of the smaller flowers. These colors are in the kind of muted tones, so they're not like right in your face, which I like a lot. I like to have some little bit of subtlety sometimes in my cards. So I've inked up the wheat shafts. Now I'm coming in with the smaller flowers. And if you are familiar with a flower called a straw flower, that's kind of the look I was going for by inking these smaller flowers up with the antique linen. Now I decided to add a fourth color, this ripe persimmon, because I did want a little bit of orange to add to this bouquet. Ripe persimmon is, I feel like an orange that would go with this more subtle and more pale color scheme that we had on our original ink combination. So you can see there I'm going in with a kind of a light hand with this ripe persimmon, and it's going to fit in just nicely with the other images that we have die cut and inked up. So I've pretty much covered both of the flowers, that side profile of the sunflower and the forward-facing profile sunflower with that ripe persimmon. And I'm just going to come in and darken in the middle of our sunflower with that rusty hinge. Now I'm using a couple of different sizes of brushes for this whole creation today. I've used kind of the mid-size brush. And now I'm using the tiny brushes, small brushes. Both of these sets come from Simon Says Stamp. I know some other manufacturers have some on the market that are similar in size, but it kind of does make it easier for you to get into the smaller spaces and get some fine detail when you have different sizes of brushes for your ink blending. Now, of course, when we're creating an arrangement, we got to have some sort of vessel to put our arrangements in. So I'm going to use the ceramic vases die set from Simon Hurley. This is his collaboration with Spellbinders. One of the things that I like about this die set is that it's actually, you have the die that cuts out just the vessel, and then if you choose, you can add some detail to the vessel with that insert for the die. I decided I just wanted the vessel, so I just using the outside outline that's going to cut out the vessel. I'm going to bring in some mint tape again, and mint tape is reusable, so this is the same piece that I was using earlier. I just tore it in half. And I'm going to tape down those dies and run them through my die cutting machine and get our vessels out. For these vessels, I kind of wanted a little bit of a antiqued or aged appearance for the vessels. So I'm going to come in with this rusty hinge and lay down a layer of the rusty hinge on on the die cuts. This first die cut, I'm coming in a little bit heavier, but with the second die cut, you'll see in just a moment, I kind of go with a little bit of a lighter hand. But again, going for that imperfection, not complete coverage. This is going to kind of look, because this is going to give us some depth and dimension, especially when we move on to the next step that we're going to do to add a little bit more detail to these vessels. So I have some of the waffle flower small, I think they're 0 shader brushes. These are very, very tiny brushes that are used to just add some detail and some shading to your already inked up images. So I'm going to use this brush to actually do like a stippling kind of technique with ink, and it's going to create a little bit of texture, of the look of texture on our vases. So after I've inked up my brush, I'm just going to pounce it all over my vessel just to create some texture and some dimension on our vessels here. And you can see that it kind of, it really does add a lot to these vessels. You can see they kind of got that aged look, like they've been used for years, for decades, and I like that about this because it kind of goes with this muted, uneven texture that we have going on with our flowers. So just keep pouncing until you get it where you like it. I didn't pounce over the entire image. I kind of did in some specific areas, and I really like the way those turned out. So I'm going to be placing these floral arrangements on a background. And I'm going to go ahead and ink up that background with some antique linen. I'm going to come in with a light hand, and I'm just going to cover this entire background with this ink color. Once I got finished with that ink color, I still was like, I think this needs just a little bit more of something. So I'm bringing in a old, and when I say old, y'all, I mean an old embossing folder. This embossing folder is very thin because you guys know, if you've bought any embossing folders recently, they're much thicker now, especially the ones that have that are 3D embossing folders and give you that kind of effect. But this one is called Wood Grain. I don't think that it's available anymore, but if you wanted to recreate this, you could use any embossing folder that you have that has a wood grain effects to it. I wanted to make sure that I had a little bit more detail and dimension in the inset areas. So I took that antique linen, that's the same color we inked the card up with, ran it across the areas of the embossing folder, and you can see there where it pressed even more of that color into the recessed areas of our image, our background there. If you do decide to ink up your embossing folder, make sure you wipe it off with a microfiber cloth before you put it away. That way you won't have any ink transferred the next time you use that embossing folder. So now we're going to kind of lay out an arrangement of the flowers to kind of figure out exactly where we want things to be. I'm going to come in first with the stems, because those are sizable, and we want to make sure that we have space for those and see how many of those we want to use. Because again, we have multiples of everything, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to use it all. So I've kind of placed some of the wheat shafts in the vases. I've also put some of the flowers on there. I end up not using any of those straw flowers at all. I just didn't feel like they added anything to the arrangement. But I did trim down some of the stems to kind of make sure everything fit nicely and proportionally on the card base. So you guys know that I love to use the trick of using the press and seal whenever I'm doing a card like this where I've made some sort of layout or arrangement, and I use that press and seal to kind of pick up everything in the exact place that it's in so that I can turn it over and add some adhesive to the back. So I'm going to come in first with some liquid adhesive and kind of put that behind some of the stems and the flowers to make sure that they're all connected together. This is the Barely Arts glue with the super fine nozzle on it. I absolutely love this glue and this nozzle. But because they have a textured background, I did want this floral arrangement to sit up a little bit from our background panel that we created. So I'm putting some foam dots on all over the arrangement, and now I'm going to adhere that arrangement to our textured background. These foam dots are really going to help secure this arrangement to this textured background. It's not a 3D background embossing folder that was used, but nonetheless, it has a lot of texture going on. So you just want to make sure you have something that catches everything nicely and holds your arrangement securely on your background. So once we peel away that press and seal tape, we can see what our arrangement looks like on our background. Now that little leaf right there did not look like it was coming out of the top of the vase, so that kind of threw everything off. So I just pulled it off, and I'm going to use a little bit more of that Barely Arts glue and place that into, make it look nicer and actually like it's actually coming out of the opening of the vase. But I did want it to kind of sit behind the flower, so I just lifted up the petals of the flower and eased my leaf behind the flowers. Off camera, I went ahead and used my favorite autumn messages stamp set from Hero Arts to stamp a sentiment. I did ink it up a little bit with some the antique linen, and I used vintage photo to stamp it because I wanted it nice and dark. Place some foam dots on the back of that, and we're going to pop that up on our card panel. Lots of dimension going and texture going on in this card with the inking, with the embossing folder, with the foam dots. This is looking really, really nice. I decided to put this card panel on a craft card base, and I'm going to use some artsy glue to glue this background to our card panel. I decided not to pop this one up with foam tape. I'm just going to glue it directly to the card base. Once I get that positioned and I press it down in place, this card will be complete. I want to thank you all for joining me for another video on my YouTube channel. If you have enjoyed this video, please make sure that you give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel and becoming a part of the Delta Crafter family. As always, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at The Delta Crafter, as well as on my website, thedeltacrafter.com. I have lots of videos here on YouTube for you to check out. Make sure you check out the playlist as well, because I have lots of holiday cards that are on there and some more that are in the works. I want to thank you again for joining me, and until next time, everyone, enjoy!